Hello, I'm Laurel.
And I'm Bobby, and welcome to Lesson 4 of our Huntsville.
Today we'll learn about how Alabama became a state and how it happened right here in our own backyard.
Today's vocabulary words that you need to look for are capital,
Compromise,
constitution,
convention,
debate,
delegates,
document,
and reporter.
and now here's Tim Hall with your lesson.
Thanks, kids. Now in today's lesson, you'll learn about how Huntsville had grown and how our city was the place where a group of people met to help Alabama become a state. The land and mountains surrounding the Big Spring attracted settlers. Many families created new homes in the growing community of Huntsville. They grew crops like cotton and corn, and the new city began to prosper. So many people moved into the Alabama Territory that President James Monroe officially designated the region as the Alabama Territory in March of 1817. But that wasn't enough for the president. He heard the tales of scenic mountains and lively communities, and he came to see firsthand why the new territory was attracting so much attention. In June of 1819, President Monroe visited Huntsville, but he didn't tell city leaders about his trip. His visit was a surprise. When Huntsville residents realized the president was in town, they went to work welcoming him to their settlement. Each family tidied their homes and made sure that everyone was wearing their Sunday best. As he toured the surrounding territory, President Monroe admired the accomplishments of the community. All of the city's society gathered to honor the distinguished guest. The president stayed at the Green Bottom Inn. Leroy Pope hosted an official state dinner. Legend says the city leaders toasted the president 21 times and fired a cannon each time they raised their glasses. The idea of statehood was planted well before President Monroe visited the Alabama Territory, but his visit helped push support for joining the United States. Monroe was impressed with the prosperity and success of the region. He realized that the Alabama Territory would be a profitable addition to the country. As a state, President Monroe knew it could add several important military positions to protect the rest of the country from foreign and Indian invasion. While he was in the territory, the president wasn't quiet about encouraging city leaders to pursue statehood. Before he left town, Monroe promised city leaders he would support Alabama becoming a state and do everything in his power to ensure its addition to the Union. The Alabama Territory stretched from Huntsville south to the coast of Mobile. As support for the new state grew, each county had to select leaders. They were called delegates, and they would represent their communities during the planning of a new state. On July 5, 1819, the delegates met in Huntsville to develop the guidelines for their new state. This was called the Constitutional Convention. They needed to create a state constitution or legal document declaring the region's laws and intentions. 44 delegates traveled the dusty roads of Alabama to gather and share ideas. They represented 22 counties and thousands of people. The delegates knew they had an important task ahead. Each brought ideas and concerns to the Alabama Constitutional Convention. They were creating a new state, a new home for their families, and a new government for the future. The city was filled with the honored dignitaries. Each family did their best to welcome the delegates. The Green Bottom Inn was filled with visitors. Hostesses brought out their best linen and china for meals and showed off their warm Southern hospitality. But the delegates didn't spend their time in elegant dining rooms or graceful parlors. Instead, they shared their ideas and created the Constitution in a cabinet maker's shop. The large workroom was the only building large enough to hold 44 delegates. John Williams Walker was selected as president of the convention. He guided the meetings and gave each delegate a turn to discuss thoughts and plans. A Huntsville lawyer, Clement Comer Clay, was selected to lead the team that drafted the first copy of the Alabama Constitution. Throughout the state, residents followed the progress of the convention by reading about it in their local newspapers. John Boardman was the editor and usually the only reporter for Huntsville's own paper, the Alabama Republican. The newspapers were simple printed sheets that were often passed around by travelers. During the Constitutional Convention, Boardman's articles were printed throughout the state and read by countless citizens. Huntsville was selected as the young state's temporary capital. Without cleared roads or a direct route, The delegates knew how hard it would be for the new state's lawmakers to travel to northern Alabama from Mobile and other distant towns. The first permanent capital of Alabama was Cahaba, but flooding in the town was a problem, so state leaders moved the capital to Tuscaloosa. That's where the University of Alabama is located. It was difficult for state leaders to travel to Tuscaloosa, so the capital was moved again, this time to its present location in Montgomery. Now our governor, state senate, state House of Representatives, and state Supreme Court is in a convenient location in Montgomery. The delegates debated what should be included in the Constitution. When the delegates didn't agree on an issue, they would compromise. A compromise means each side gives up a little of what they want to form an agreement. Once the Constitution was written, delegates had to vote and approve it.
I guess you're looking for me. My name is Mr. Bibb, William Wyatt Bibb, that is. In 1819, Alabama became a state and appointed me to be the first governor of Alabama. Huntsville became the first temporary capital of Alabama. Recognize me? My picture's hanging in the state capitol building of Montgomery.
One of the important speakers during the debates was Huntsville resident William Wyatt Bibb. Bibb's father was one of Huntsville's founders. William Wyatt Bibb was elected Alabama's first governor after the territory became a state. The delegates worked hard for almost a month. They finalized and signed the Constitution of Alabama on August 2, 1819. The document was sent to Washington, D.C. On December 14, 1819, President Monroe signed a resolution that officially welcomed Alabama into the United States of America. And that's how Alabama became a state. Now here's the Our Huntsville Kids with a little review.
And now, here's a look back at today's vocabulary. Capital, a city where state or national government is located.
Compromise, to give up something in order to get something.
Constitution, the basic laws and ideas of a government.
Convention, meeting of persons gathered together for a common purpose.
Debate, a logical argument to discuss the pros and cons of ideas.
Delegates, persons who represent others at a meeting.
Document, an important paper.
Reporter, one who writes or tells about events.
And now, back to our host, Tim.
Thanks, kids. Now join us for Lesson 5, when we'll show you why cotton was so important to the South. For Our Huntsville, I'm Tim Hall.